Oh, yes, it's that music coming into again, and it is time once again for the Cosmic Crossfire. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We thank you so much for listening to the show today, and it returns. It's the Cosmic Crossfire, and it would definitely not be a Cosmic Crossfire without my good friend. He is the man, the myth, the legend behind RobMcCallumFilms.com. You got to check out all the great things going at Rob McCallum Films, including the smash hit that sold out on Amazon. It's the Amazing Kitty documentary. And here he is now, my good friend, the director, Rob McCallum. What's going on, man?
Oh, just living the dream and gearing up for a really busy month. April 2018, I will be run off my feet. It is nice that we're out of March, and like as you said, the Kitty Doc has been released to much fanfare for sure, and a lot of critical acclaim as the press starts rolling in, and we're really excited to have that out there. And it's by far one of my favorite projects that I've done for a variety of reasons. So anybody that has Amazon, go order it now. It may be out of stock because they did sell out on their opening day, and it shot up to #1 on the metal charts because it's included a live CDs part of that set. So check out Kitty Origins Evolutions. Hear the tale of the heavy metal band that started with a group of teenagers who wondered, wouldn't it be great if we were rock stars? And they got to live the dream for better or worse. And 20 years later, they're here to tell their story. And then
And
there's
as
April.
And there's April. Well, I will say this about the Kitty documentary. I have seen it, and as a documentary, just covering the band itself and what they've gone through and all their music and over the years or whatnot, it doesn't get any better than what Rob McCallum has done for them out there. So if you get a chance, check it out. Kitty Origins and Evolutions. But like you said, April is a new month, and you've got a lot going on starting this month as well.
Well, I should say you and I did talk briefly off camera. In your big concern with the Kitty Doc was you wanted to know more. You wanted to see and hear more. And there is a 3-hour version out there of the documentary. It was reserved just for Indiegogo backers, but you never know. If you make enough noise and the sales do well enough, they may try to get that 3-hour version from us and release it en masse. So check it out. Check out the 90-minute version. If you want to know more, then make some noise online, and who knows what'll happen.
Well, because like I said, there's so much to learn, and there's so much that you want to know when it comes to Kitty and their success, the rise and fall, the ups and downs. So much got put into the 90-minute that you just want to know more. So definitely check it out today, Kitty Origins and Evolutions. But again, you've got a lot of stuff going on in April, my friend, including an announcement that you made coming up for later this month.
Oh, was there a little announcement? Did we make an announcement today on Facebook?
You might have, from what I saw, unless you and Jay just like to stand together and just smile right in front of the camera.
Well, I will say that we had a pretty good laugh on April Fools. We we had a pretty good laugh with the post we made on Sunday, April 1st that said it had a picture of us and it said Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Who's ready for Super Nintendo Quest? Game on.
I
Of
saw
course,
that.
that was a joke.
People freaked out.
People definitely freaked out, but it was fun, and that was all strategy, of course, because that led to today's post. And today's post basically said, after 5 years, we're ready to go on another quest, and on April 24th, join us on Kickstarter to see what that quest might pertain to. What is this new quest that Jane and Rob are going on? Kickstarter, April 24th. It'll be great.
Looking forward to it as well, and anything that we at the Pop Culture Cosmos can do to help you achieve that success, both you and Mr. J, who I just spoke with last week in regards to the Solo movie, and I know he's pointedly looking forward to it as well. Definitely want to do what I can to see what we can do to help you achieve that success for your upcoming project. Again, that's going to be on Kickstarter April 24th. So, my friend, there is a lot going on in the realm of pop culture. So, pray tell, Rob, what's on your mind when it comes to pop
Well,
culture.
I definitely feel like I'm probably off the old beaten path of some of the normal topics that are out there. I've got three or four things that we should talk about for sure. Starting with Ready Player One, I think it's dividing some people on some level, and everybody's a little bit surprised by it. This is still a film that I did not see a lot of press for, uh, which is really shocking given the success of the book and the fact that Steven Spielberg is the director behind it. The only press that I really saw was like really negative, given some of the online posters that had been shared out there and people were criticizing, like we talked about before. And I just kind of did a bit of a survey over Easter weekend as I ran into some friends and family just to ask them what they thought of it, whether they'd seen it or not. And overwhelmingly, the response was, this looks like a CG fest with a lot of nostalgic references. And it was like an off putting thing for them. And I thought, well, it's really interesting that we're still in an era where there's this story that definitely has this computer generated imagery world, and it's off-putting. I don't know if that's because it's animation, if it's the look and the style of the animation, if animation as a whole is relegated to kids so it's not an adult thing, or adults can enjoy that very specific look. And would it have been more successful if it was like the Matrix and everything was like live action but we knew it was in a different kind of computer world? And then there's the pop culture side of things. Obviously, for those that have read the book, like myself and Gerald, I can't remember. Have you checked out the book?
I read it last year, yes, and it
Yeah.
is decidedly different than the actual film results. I will say this: I actually did enjoy the CG for the first and third key experiences were some of the most brilliant CGI I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
I
good.
just truly cannot say enough good things about it. The second key, however, I did have issues. I mean, my full review is up on the popculturecosmos.wordpress.com site. I did give it a positive review overall. I thought there was plenty of issues with it, but when it is really keyed in the Oasis, it is absolutely brilliant as far as the first and third experiences, as far as getting those keys are concerned and what they had to do with it and all the pop culture icons that are part of it. Just truly just was amazing to me and almost brought a tear to my eye because these are all things that Rob, I will tell you, as someone who is approaching 50 years old, it is something that I have experienced in some form or fashion in every aspect as far as it's concerned. And it to me was just amazing to see it all on film come to life in that type of realm. Something I would have never imagined before, let's say, even 15 years ago, I would have never been able to imagine or fathom that. So to me, those parts were good. The second key experience I thought was really disappointing. And I'm going to talk to Josh. We're going to go, we're going to express our frustration with that, especially with news that came out after that in regards to what it was before. So I'm going to delve with Josh into that. But I will say this overall, it was a positive experience for me as far as Ready Player One, and it is doing pretty good. It exceeded box office expectations. It's now garnered over $200 million worldwide, so it actually may end up seeing a profit for Warner Brothers.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I haven't seen it yet. So I love that you have a review up there that I can check out the second I do get to sit down. Um, I'm gonna be super skeptical because I know people have said it is very different from the book. And
That
to
it
be
is.
and which is okay because I like a lot of books and films and have their own different versions, and I really like Jurassic Park as a movie, and I really love the book like on its own thing, and I can appreciate them for their own pros and cons. But when it comes to the references, my concern, and I get where people are coming from, but they don't have, if they haven't read the book, then they don't understand the role that the references play into this giant quest to figure out what's going on and who's involved and why these things are there, and they're not just hey, remember when, or isn't it cool to have this reference? It's ingrained in the story and in the characters, much like who we are now as a society, which I think is really brilliant. It's actually really pertinent to the story. And the book does a good job of explaining what it is if you're not familiar with it, but not in a way that is overbearing or holding your hand. So it'll be interesting to see how the film does that. Probably just like really whittles it down. But my fear is when you dilute something like that, it really loses the luster of it. It does feel a little bit more of a cheap reference because you don't have the richness of it. So when we see these trailers where we have like Master Chief and the Iron Giant and the DeLorean and all these other references out there, it's like how much I can't blame people for saying, yeah, look at these call outs, all these other films, because I don't think the film can really go in depth on this stuff. And I would, and the more and more I thought about it, and the more and more I thought about the book, it made me really feel like this should not have been a feature film. This really should have been a series. And with Ready Player 2 having being announced, what a perfect way to kind of extend that series. Now, this is not a series that has to go on forever. Some, it can just be 10 episodes straight, like a limited run. And if Ready Player 2, it does well as a book, then maybe that's season 2. But, take the time to do this well, and you certainly have the audience for it in the realm of television. And I think you could probably even make a little bit more money if you were to do it that way, rather than risk it all as a theatrical run at the box office and possible failure. Now, like you said, it's doing well at the box office. I think this will be one of those Spielberg films that has a very specific audience. It's kind of like a cult favorite. It's not going to get wide claim, probably hugs from everybody out there. But it sounds like I just can't imagine anybody else trying to helm something this big, with this many layers of detail than Spielberg himself. Really? I mean, can you?
No. But then again, only his clout could get all those pop culture references as far as getting the rights to actually show it on screen. I don't think many other individuals out there can get or amass as many pop culture references as he could. I mean, he got his hands literally on almost everything that they were asking for. Just to me, it just seems like people that are concerned as far as the differences. And you know what? There are vast differences between the book and the film. And if you've not read the book yet, I suggest seeing the film first and taking it in for what it is before you delve into the book. It's one of the things I recommend. But yes, there are vast differences. But the book and the film have pluses and minuses for being so different. There's some things the book did better. There's some things the film did better. Now, overall, if you're going to put a gun to my head, I'd probably say the book is a tiny bit better than the actual film. But again, they both have their strong points and weak points as well. So,
and I gotta be honest, the weak points for me, and I can tell from the trailer, is the third act. The big kind of now it's time for the ultimate battle kind of push is the thing that I felt really let down by the book, because for the first 3/4 of that book, this was going in some interesting territory that I really wish didn't have to be resolved in this, apocalyptic, everyone, rush to arms, unite and join the fight. And clearly that's what happens in the trailer, because you can see like the wave of avatars coming over the hill.
And to me, I love that. To me, I love seeing that, and I understand.
It's a cool visual, but like, how many films and stories do we have to see that?
And I get that part of it. I understand that that's probably maybe just a narrative cop out for lack of a better term. So I can totally understand where you get that. But Ready Player One to me, I think was, like I said, a pretty solid film, and I do hope that there is going to be a Ready Player 2 that eventually gets on screen, because just for someone, it was just different to see something like that on film in and of itself, because, we see all the formulaic movies and whatnot. We see all the same things over and over: superhero this, superhero that, destruction this, sci-fi that, adventure this, love story that, and obviously it does have those tropes in the movie itself, but it was just nice to see something a little bit away from the norm as far as what it presented on screen and how it presented it. So to me, like I said, in that novelty in and of itself, it may not be so great the second time around, but hey, for me, it was still a solid movie experience. And it was kind of a nice rush to see that initial, Wade Watts putting on the visor and getting that experience, even on a standard def screen. So that, like I said, for me overall, it was a pleasant experience.
Do you think it could have been successful if they would have went like something the route of like the Matrix and done like a live action Oasis instead of CG everywhere?
I don't think so, because that's one of the,
or like some sort of hybrid.
Well, it would have had to been developed better outside the Oasis. And I think if you read my review on popculturecosmos.wordpress.com out there, you'll see that
And for
yeah,
everybody listening, the Oasis is the game world that everybody
yeah.
plugs into, where most of the story takes place.
Yeah, and most of the story does take place, and in the movie, it's probably better served for doing so. When it gets outside of it, that's when you have some questions, possibly around there, as far as and opinions on how it's being developed and whatnot. But for me, as far as maybe a TV standpoint, you have more time to flesh out that backstory. You have more time to flesh out that world outside of the Oasis, that dystopian world in 2045 in Columbus and all around the world. And I know there were some people, like I said, that have severe differences with the book and the film being so vastly different from one another. So I understand that could be the start of it, is the realm outside of the Oasis, and how maybe the thoughts on it were vastly changed. So, to me, I think the film was better served the more it was in the Oasis, for the most part, anyways.
Okay. Next on the docket is another question about Apple, and they're coming under fire more and more about nothing really like they did anything wrong, but there's a lot of industry curiosity, especially as we gear up for NAB around the corner, which is the National Association Broadcaster trade show, which takes place in Las Vegas. It's the show where a lot of new tech and cameras and gear and software gets released. And it really sets that side of the scope going forward for the year to come. And a lot of people are wondering what Apple's going to do in the content space. Are they going to sit back and slowly develop their own material as they have been? Or are they going to push forward and actually acquire a studio and really signify that they're here as a content player for their own streaming kind of creation or originals? They've committed to spending $1 billion in original program. Compared to Netflix, that's a lot less, considering Netflix is spending $8 billion. So a lot of industry people are saying, oh no, they should buy an A24 or they should buy Lionsgate just to speed things up, to get them up to speed, maybe to cut corners, maybe to just get that material out there quicker. And a lot of other people are saying they don't need to do any of that. Apple's great at building their own thing. They built iTunes on their own. They figured out those licenses. The last time Apple did a big acquisition, it was $3 billion acquisition of Beats, and I don't know that was a real game changer for them, other than basically giving them, a luxury headphone device that they could offer when somebody buys an iPhone. I don't think it really changed the market too much, as it just gave them another outlet for some technology that they can probably use in other ways. So I don't know that buying a studio is really the way to go. And the only kind of reason to buy a studio is to get their back catalog. And while Lionsgate has some nice titles in their catalog, I don't know that A24 really has the breadth that some of these other companies have. Now, it's reported that they have $285 billion in cash on hand, let alone if they choose to liquidate some other assets. So $285 billion can buy a lot. It could have bought Fox, for the reported price tag of $160 billion. It could maybe buy Disney if it really wanted to. So why would you go after a small pony when you could go after something else? Now, along the same lines, over, I think, a year ago, I want to say 15 months ago, it was rumored that Apple was going to buy Netflix so that they could have a streaming service alongside iTunes, so they can have basically their stream site and then their buying site. At the time, Netflix was reportedly worth 40 billion, and of course, it's only gone up since then, and now it's reported to be worth about 124 billion. So they still have the money that they could spend on it, and still have half left over in their coffers to spend on the original programming that Netflix is already committed to, and then some. But what is the big end game here for Apple? And so for them to buy a studio, I don't know that they need to buy a studio to be a player. What do you think in this whole scope of Apple's decisions to dip their toes in content? And is a decision and is some action really becoming necessary of them, or can they just sit in the background and do what they do?
Well, of course they can sit in the background, but is it the wisest decision to do so? I think that you hit it right on the head, my friend, when you talked about that they acquired Beats, and it really hasn't done much to change their outlook. I understand maybe they were trying to reach a different age group, demographic, what have you, and a marketplace that they maybe weren't reaching as far as that they would have liked. And it really hasn't transcended into that. And I think the best things that Apple does is done organically. And this would, to me, would be no different. And I agree with you. I think they should go ahead and build from the ground up, and they should become, maybe a larger player in it. And hopefully, this is the baby steps. Hopefully, this is the first walk through into something larger. I'm hoping that it will be able to be an alternative that people can go to, a viable one at that. Because as you see, we've seen, because as someone who is a Netflix customer and sees all that money being spent with all that stuff that actually Tyler Baker was on the other day talking about some of the stuff that was just on there, and it's just so immeasurable how much is actually produced for Netflix at this point in time. Well, that leads into a bigger question. Netflix does not have the financial power and weight that Apple does. How much can they continue? How long can they continue to spend this type of money and actually get that kind of return? Because as a whole, Netflix doesn't even, we're not even sure if Netflix actually turns an actual profit.
And when I think about Netflix and profit and the economics of it all, I start to think about things like Movie Pass. And I start to think about things like free to play games. And I start to think about things like Facebook. At some point, something has got to give. Now, Netflix raised their prices a few months ago to their legacy subscribers, the people that had been with them for about 6 years, by $1 or $2. And of course, with the number of subscribers they have, that instantly raised like $200-300 million per month going forward, which is really great. And you multiply that out, that covers a quarter of their new original programming budget that they're going to do. Sometimes you don't need to have the economics behind you to have value. Facebook was losing money for a very long time. Movie Pass continues to bleed and lose money. They were most recently offering Movie Pass for $7. $7 to see a single movie a day for the month. $7. How do you not do that? Gerald, tell me you've signed up for Movie Pass.
I am seriously thinking about it this time.
$7 for your whole family. You're in for $30. That's it.
But there's also got to remember, it's also where you can go and see it. There's still certain little contingencies.
Okay, but even if you choose to go see Infinity War and buy those tickets, you're still going to be able to get your $30 back on just one other trip to the movies.
But yeah, it's I know it's out there. It's $7. It's so attractive, and I know Josh and I have talked about this on and off camera as well. So it's very, very enticing. And you're right. You don't know how they can sustain a business model of that type.
So like it just goes to show though, like you can be a major player and not really have anything behind you, for better or worse. At some point, the margin call is going to come, the bell's going to ring, and you don't want to create a Great Depression again. But as long as somebody believes in what you're doing, you're going to have venture capitalists out there that keep you floating. And Netflix has the brand awareness and the brand power to do that right now. I say that, and then I look at other companies like MySpace, and we see what's kind of happened to that. And we've even seen bigger companies like eBay take a dive against stuff like Amazon that's popped up, right? eBay is not what it once was in the late 90s, early 2000s. Amazon has quickly replaced that. Even Walmart, a huge brand that globally is starting to take a massive dive because of other companies like Amazon, namely, and rightfully so. So nothing is sacred, but when you have brand and you have a following and you have a presence, that is always going to have value, even if you don't have anything in the bank.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. And then it well, we talk about all the social media, as far as Spotify just is, that's doing an IPO as we speak, as far as it's concerned. And people are talking about it going between $150-250 a share, but they're not really sure exactly how to gauge it, because it is one of the more profitable brands of its type out there. But we're not really sure for the long term exactly what their plans for what their plans are, and how they're going to be able to execute them in kind of a digital radio space.
Yeah, I mean it's an ever growing kind of landscape, because for the longest time, podcasts are nothing. They're not real radio. And then you had all celebrities kind of come in and start to do podcasts, and they took away listening numbers from, the FM stations, and then Sirius XM before, or XM radio and Sirius FM. And then they merged, of course, because they couldn't compete. So now you have basically Spotify trying to take a piece of that pie too. And what is their role going to be? And then you have stuff like Apple Music as well that is going to try to take another piece of that pie, and they're doing their own radio stations via Apple Music and their own artist playlists. And as many new players as there are, the pie is only so big. That pie really doesn't grow that much. And so, like, well, and I tell people this, people want to do a documentary on this topic or this topic, video games, for example. A lot of people want to do different ideas, or this would be great to do a documentary on the Castlevania series or Metal Gear, because it's been around for a long time. And I tell them, like, yeah, that's great, but there's so many documentaries out there. For you to find success, you better not only execute well, that's like has to be a given, but you must find such a compelling way to talk about that it truly stands out and becomes much bigger than what you're talking about. It has to be bigger than the subject matter. The subject matter almost has to disappear as people are watching, and they have to see the meta story that's going on. Like we talked about Kitty, right? This is about what it's like to get the ultimate dream as a teenager and become a rock star. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Here's the thing. It happened to these four women. This is what they went on, so you can kind of live vicariously through them. That is the big thing. What happens when, careful what you wish for, because you could be in for the ride of your life. That's the kind of overall meta question that happens. And it becomes bigger than any of the stakes. So if you're going to do something on Castlevania, you better have a really good thematic kind of through line that rises above video games that were released that people like.
This is true. Otherwise, it's just going to fall into a bunch of other like video game documentaries or any other documentaries that matter. Nature documentaries. You can't just have the same type of nature documentary that everyone else has had. What new thing are you going to bring to the table? I think is probably the best example I can make out of that. And like with your Kitty documentary, what is new about the Kitty documentary that is going to appeal to a broader audience?
Well, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of things. A lot of the times people just want to focus on the history, not the overall stakes or the emotional through line about what happens as you go through it. And those bigger questions, like, imagine we did get to do this. Well, we did. And here's the story. And did we come out better for it? Didn't we come out better for it? What's the future of this? Is there an end? What is the scope of the industry as a result 20 years later? So those are some of those bigger questions. And so when we think about Spotify trying to come into that space, or we think about Apple trying to come in to the studio space or the content creation space, it's what are they trying to do as a studio on a bigger level? Are they just making new shows because they can afford to? Or are they trying to do something with those shows? When you think of like Amblin Entertainment, Spielberg's company, of course, there's a vibe and there's a thematic push for all his stuff. He wants to do these kind of films. I don't know that Apple has really thought about their kind of content that they want to do yet. And I think what Netflix started to do that stuff, they're trying to cater to so many people so quickly that they don't have a thematic brand presence. It's just on demand now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying with Amblin Entertainment, it's funny because Spielberg is one of those rare individuals in the movie industry that can get away with doing something like The Post, and just 4 months later, come out with something completely different in Ready Player One.
In very weird timings for Spielberg films too. To have a late December push for The Post to try to get it in just for the award season, and then have like a pre-blockbuster big budget film with Ready Player One in March, essentially the end of March, like not quite May, not quite, and certainly not summer, but to have it in March to kind of get ahead of the Avengers kind of hoopla, if you will. Really, really interesting stuff there.
Would have been so funny if he accidentally put like a Sonic the Hedgehog right in the middle, right next to Tom Hanks there and whatnot. Oh, wrong movie. I'm sorry. So he's like the modern day Rob McCallum, where he just has so many things on his plate. it's just so hard to keep
I don't.
track of it all.
No. I don't quite think that. I don't quite think that.
I just thought I'd throw that by you.
Yeah. Uh, moving on though, here we are going to talk about some sequels, of course, and these are two films that have been in development for a very long time. And this is more just kind of what do you think? Which one would you rather have out there? What are the compelling reasons for them? Uh, do we even need them? And up on the sequel wars this time on the Cosmic Crossfire is Beetlejuice 2 versus Bill and Ted 3.
Wow. I know. Both have been talked about at length. I don't need either one of them per se because Bill and Ted 2 is really bad.
No, Bill and Ted 2 is like one of my favorite movies. Gerald, you're fired.
Just,
I tell you right now,
I
it is
did.
the film.
I'll say this: William Sadler's performance as Death was cool. That to me was a saving grace of the movie.
It is the film I have seen more than any other film. I have seen it over 800 times.
Wow, amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, I have seen it a couple times myself. But it just doesn't match the original to me. As far as maybe it's just the novelty of it and things of that nature. Maybe it's the fact that I saw Bill and Ted in the theaters and maybe I experienced Bill and Ted in a different fashion.
And you weren't too far from San Dimas.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I will say this, that of the two, I could probably take a Bill and Ted 3 over a Beetlejuice 2, even though I have seen both.
Which of the two do you think it's going to be harder to hit the mark with?
It would probably be a Beetlejuice. I mean, yeah, Michael Keaton, I'm sure, is keen to doing it. I'm sure it's still going to be something that's presented well, but to have that same kind of magic that the original one did and the same kind of specialness that I think that movie created, I think that one's going to be hard to capture. Bill and Ted's 3 is, you don't really have to do a whole lot there. Just entertain, just have some goofy jokes and go into different time frames, and there you go. I mean, have some type of goofy offhanded story where they reach back into the phone booth and dial up some more time zones. There you go. It doesn't really have to be cutting edge entertainment. Whereas with Beetlejuice, I think it has to be more thought of. It has to be more well thought out, I think is probably the best way I could say it, as far as and developed as far as a script, as a screenplay, and the whole 9 yards. I think a lot more work has to be done to see if you can make it still a quality product.
Which do you think would be remembered more if they both came out?
Beetlejuice 2.
Really? And you're assuming that it hit the mark and all that, and it lived up to the hype?
Yes, that would be that case. Even if it doesn't, if it flops, then it probably would be more remembered for being a flop after so many years than a Bill and Ted 3.
I don't know. I like the idea of Bill and Ted trilogy as a entity, as a presence. I just think there's less risk. I think there is more upside. I think going into it, like you said, all it has to do is entertain, go on a off the wall kind of journey, have some fun, be ridiculous in the best possible way. I think because expectations on something like that are so low, it could easily overperform.
And I agree with you on that. And that's what I'm trying to correlate. Whereas the expectations with a Beetlejuice 2 would be much higher.
And that's why I say I think Bill and Ted 3 could be more memorable of the two, because going into it, you're like, oh, it's just a Bill and Ted movie. And then it just like becomes this awesome thing where it's excellent and you can party on, dude, through all 90 minutes or 2 hours, versus hoping that the CG or the effects and the creature work and Beetlejuice holds up and that the storyline is creepy and macabre and makes sense. And I don't know. With like of the two, I say definitely greenlight Bill and Ted 3, because I don't think there's anything really precious there. I think it's going to be a fun romp. But Beetlejuice, it's like, do you want to do a sequel to, I don't know, do you want to do Godfather 4? Not really. Let that be its own thing. You don't want to mess with what worked and what's kind of the holy grail on its own. Like leave that kind of alone.
Well, I know you've seen the pictures, the
Like
updated
here's what I
pictures
compare it to. Here would be the
on
perfect
social media. Okay, well, let me ask you this.
Okay, 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 okay.
You saw the updated photo of them in the phone booth as far as within social media, correct?
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. The funniest comments I heard were about how people could see the big smile on Alex Winter's face, that he's now back relevant again and part of something on screen that could actually potentially be something special, as far as making money and drawing and whatnot. People don't realize he's had a nice career out,
He's had a
outside.
great career
Yeah,
outside of Bill and Ted, and the second he was basically done that stuff, he was in Lost Boys too, wasn't he?
that's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
but he's done a lot of off
but
camera
like
as
he's
well.
been a critically acclaimed documentary director that has done some like very compelling material. I think one of his pieces was nominated for an Academy Award.
Exactly, exactly. But people
Like
don't realize that. That's what's so funny, and they just think, "Oh, well, where'd they drag him out, or where'd they get
like
him out
he
of?"
doesn't need this. This is not like, oh, this is my chance to make money again. He doesn't need this at all. And Keanu's, having a nice resurgence with John Wick, of course, and the third one is starting to film, and they're talking about the TV series and stuff. So I mean, he doesn't really need it either. But it's nice to see that Keanu, who's always been kind of like a pro Bill and Ted guy, can get far enough away from like the fame of the Matrix and some of the other films that he did in the late 1990s and the 2000s to be like, yeah, I can embrace this character and I can go forward again as Ted Theodore Logan.
And
I
that's
think it's
something that's
great.
always been great to see, is that he wasn't resistant, because I think that's the common perception that a lot of people were having, is that Keanu Reeves resisted from actually ever approaching that role again, and it's far from the opposite.
And what I really like about this is, and it's from this. What I like, it's from the same writers and storytellers that did the original two Bill and Ted's, but of course they also did Men in Black. And when you think about Bill and Ted, you can see the similarities almost instantly to what's going on in Men in Black. And they announced a Men in Black spinoff too, but by the sounds of it, I think that was a couple weeks ago. So that'll be interesting to see where that goes. But it's that buddy comedy on a journey through something that's wacky and like unimaginable. And as long as it kind of connects the narrative dots, it doesn't matter how zany it gets. And that's why it'll work. It's doing Beetlejuice 2 is very much akin to trying to nail a sequel to The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Just got to bring William Sadler back as Death, because he was
He's back as Death. He's signed
he
on.
is
He will do
okay.
it. He's in the screenplay.
Okay,
Um,
because I will tell you, I did not like Bill and Ted's 2 as much as 1, as I stated already. But William
Station.
Sadler's death, he was actually the best part of the movie for me.
Well, we all have our favorites, and that's okay. I thought the soundtrack for Bill and Ted 2 was amazing.
But there you go.
It's got a
Yes,
really great soundtrack.
I
Everything from
agree with you.
Megadeth to Faith No More to Slaughter is in there. So yeah, the last thing I want to talk about is something more of a fan friend chat that we had earlier on Easter Sunday. We were talking about cinematic universe and which is better. So this might be relegated to a show that I used to do on a podcast that we called The Great Debate, and there's a few episodes out there you can check out on my YouTube channel, and I think Gerald's played a few excerpts here and there on
Yes.
the Pop Culture Cosmos from time to time. When he's really hard up for content, he'll dip into that well.
What I'd like to see that come back someday. I don't know. That's a lot of
I know
production
you would. I know you would. But there's no intelligence to it. It's just shouting. Who can shout the loudest and be the most compelling in the moment?
Works for ESPN, doesn't it?
It works for ESPN. So the big question is, which cinematic universe is better? And I throw out this because everybody's clamoring about, oh, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is so great, and it started 10 years ago with Iron Man, and oh, look at all the stuff they've done with all these interconnected stories, and oh, it's just so good. But I posit two other entries for best cinematic universe, Gerald, and that is James Bond and the Bondverse and Star Trek.
Wow, that's a tough choice, because as much
Bond
as
has been going on since 1950, and they all do connect to each other.
and I've seen all the Bonds.
And Trek, even the original films and series tie in together, and they tie into Next Generation, and they tie into Voyager, and they tie into Deep Space Nine and Enterprise, and even the new films tie into that stuff because of Leonard Nimoy and the alternate timeline.
But it's so hard
Yeah,
because there's so many highs and lows. That's the problem. There's so many highs, and unfortunately for all three of them, there are so many lows. So many lows. More so, I think, with the Star Trek as far as that universe, because when it hit some lows as far as creatively, Star Trek Five, Final Frontier. I'm looking
I
at
love
you.
Star Trek 5. I'm that guy that likes number 5.
That's the one that was
What
directed
does
by Shatner,
God?
correct?
What does God need with the starship? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
directed by Shatner. There's
Merrily,
some
merrily,
really good
merrily,
moments.
merrily, life is but a dream. Yes, I
Yeah,
know.
there are
I
some
remember.
really good moments in that flick. I get why
Uh,
it's a little hokey, but there are some really quality moments.
yeah, well, and number one, it's still actually, it would still be going on today because it just seems like that one took forever. So,
Did you hear that the Voyager uh, orbiter satellite is still transmitting and it sent back images last week to NASA?
yeah, saw that.
Vija's
Yeah,
alive.
V'ger is alive, but there's also, when obviously went to the next generation, there were some highs and lows as well. I do love the reboots. As far as the first two in the series, the last one's kind of for me, but
The fact that you
I think I'm
you're
gonna
just gonna let it
surprise
go.
you. It would be easy for me to say the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I'm actually gonna go with Bond.
Okay.
I actually will. He is.
On what grounds? Now that you've had some time to consider, is it just the highs, or is it the duration, like the longevity of the series?
I think the fact
What
that
is
I think the fact that it's lows as far as a movie, as far as the ones that you were able to point out as far as being the worst in the film series, are still more watchable than the lows of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and also as well the um, gosh, off the top of my head, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then also as well the Star Trek universe. So I think of the three, slight thumbs up to the James Bond as far the James
so?
Bond
So
cinematic
just to
universe.
clarify, you're not necessarily comparing like the wins in each of them. You're saying they each have outstanding entries: Wrath of
Yeah,
Khan, Iron Man, uh,
Skyfall,
Skyfall, maybe. Um,
maybe I
but
like.
you're really comparing the lows and the depths in which they plummet comparatively, series to series. Yeah.
You have to, because you're now talking about what, 18
What do
films
you
of Marvel Cinematic
give me a
Universe.
handful of the entries that you're really kind of comparing? So you mentioned the Final Frontier, probably Generations is in there for Trek. Uh,
Generations is to me is all right. I think the
yeah, it's not great. It's a low for me. It's a low.
First Contact is not exactly for me a great one either.
Oh,
And
First
there were
Contact is so good. What is wrong with you?
well, I'm sorry,
James
it's
Cromwell,
not the
the
worst. There are a couple.
Borg. Oh,
There's what, Insurrection. That one's
that was
also,
bad.
yeah, that was really bad. And
And
then,
Nemesis, yikes.
well, the last Star Trek, as far as that's concerned, is not exactly a high point. As far as I think, Idris Elba could have been given a lot better material to work with, but we won't go there. I think in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the two Thor movies, the first ones are absolutely horrid, and the Hulk movies themselves are not much better. I think those, what, four right there are uh, actually those three. I'm sorry, those three are really not that well done.
I didn't mind Thor 2. I didn't mind that.
Uh, eh, eh.
I haven't seen Ragnarok yet, but I didn't mind Thor 2.
Well, Ragnarok's okay. Ragnarok's okay.
I
Ragnarok's,
know I hear it gets a lot of check marks. I
yeah.
don't know. I didn't mind the second one. I didn't mind
But
it.
with Bond, I think what, Her Majesty's Secret Service. I think that's the one that people just seem to go
People
after a
single
lot.
that out because George Lazenby's Bond, and that has nothing to do with the story. It's a really good story. It's just the fact that your titular character isn't played by Connery or Moore,
I think
or
it was okay. I thought that was okay. I didn't, what, they're what, Die Another Day is over the top cheesy, but I still think it's a pretty fun flick as far as for what it is.
oh,
There's a couple other. What's the one with Denise Richards as
the world is not enough.
yeah, World is Not Enough, where okay, that one is probably the worst one of the bunch.
I'll put Die Another Day is worse than World is Not Enough. Madonna is a fencing instructor, invisible cars, ice hotels, facial like swaps. I don't know. The only thing I really like about Die Another Day is the opening like 20 minutes where Bond actually gets taken prisoner and MI6 won't. won't trade for him. They're like, no, you've crossed the line too much, and that's that.
I personally don't. I personally dislike the world is not enough more than Dr. Christmas. For goodness sake, you couldn't think of a better name. Just that was bad.
Well, it stuck with you, didn't it? It stuck with you
for all the wrong reasons. I've had meals that stuck in my teeth for a while too. I don't think I'd like to remember
floss,
those.
Gerald. You got to floss.
That's true. That's true.
You got to get your pop culture cosmos floss out there.
But it's a close race. It's between all three. Now, if you get into others like the Lord of the Rings trilogy,
universe,
Harry Potter universe,
Star Wars.
There's so many universes out there that you could talk about that, and they each have their highs and lows. So, it goes without saying. But I think all three have their reasons why that they've connected with an audience for so long. I'm just hopeful that if for Star Trek to actually get a nice reboot, if actually Tarantino is going to pull something off like that. With Bond, obviously, that Bond's just they're already filming in production, I think, or Danny Boyle's actually doing it now. So
yeah, Danny Boyle signed on, and it's the writer of Trainspotting and him had kind of cooked up the story, and I think they're set to start shooting in May.
This will be Daniel Craig's last outing, so I don't think they bribe him back for more. So
yeah.
Hey, must be nice. I mean, with all the with some of the offers that were being floated out there for him returning, must be nice. Must be nice. But then you got Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know you are not exactly the biggest fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's not that I'm not a big fan. It's just that I'm just burnt out, and I just feel like there's way too much hype over these movies for what you actually get out of them anymore. The movies are all well crafted for the most part. Like
they have a formula.
And that's the problem. I just feel it coming. I see it coming. I see the trailer, and I felt like I've just spent 2 hours in a theater, and I'm good.
See, that's the way I feel on DC movies with a DC movie universe. Now that could be the worst of the universes that are out there.
Maybe I'll try to put together a panel of the worst cinematic universes next time we talk, and maybe I'll do another sequel wars kind of comparison too.
There you go. Sounds good. Yeah, but like I said, you should bring that show back. It'd be kind of cool, entertaining.
It's so stressful. I can't do it. For everybody that doesn't know, the Great Debate, nobody knows what side they're on when they go into it. They just know the loose topic. So we did Battle of the Bonds once, like who's the better Bond, and the roles were assigned, like who you had to defend or argue on behalf of going into it. And it's just too stressful. It's too stressful. I can't do it. Pop cultures shouldn't be stressful.
This is true, but unfortunately, as we see in our days and age, that people love to argue about anything, including pop culture.
All right. Well, that'll do it for the Cosmic Crossfire.
That will indeed. We appreciate so much you listening in on the show. If you have a question for Rob about the show itself, maybe about a topic, or about his great projects, including the Kitty documentary, Origins and Evolutions, Missing Mom, Nintendo Quest, or the upcoming Kickstarter project on April 24th, just give him a shout out.
What could it be? What could it be? April 24th. Tune in and find out.
That's right. Or you can,
of course, listen here, and you'll hear more tidbits as we go. This is the exclusive source of information for said secret project, and there'll be lots of stuff in the works.
And we truly appreciate you confiding in Pop Culture Cosmos in regards to that. So we cannot thank you enough, indeed. But if you have questions, send it to us here at popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Or you can shoot any of us a DM right here at Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, Game Source, or Rob McCallum Films on Facebook or Twitter. But Rob is a little different on Twitter. It's at Rob McZob. So that's right. That's right indeed. Rob, it's been a great pleasure having you on, talking all this great pop culture stuff. I know we had a little bit extra time today, but it was just great because we had extra stuff to deal with because you were out a week, man. We missed you, so it's just great having you back on the show.
It just completely slipped away from me. There's so much going on with this new project and wrapping up other projects. It was the cosmic maelstrom of chaos.
And a lot of chaos, but it's all well worth it. Gotten a lot of great success already with the Kitty documentary, and continued success to you with that and all your other projects. Rob, again, it's been great having you again on the show, part of the Cosmic Crossfire, and of course, a part of the pop culture cosmos.